So it's day 13 of Alan's keynotes study streak, and normally we are used to doing this study streak at 6 p.m. every day, but today we are doing it a bit later, like it's been almost 2 hours off from the time. But the idea of doing the streak, the words itself say that every day, whatever be the time, whatever be your occupation throughout the day, whatever be your commitments, you should always also be committed to studying materia medica. So today we'll study on the day 13 of Ellen's keynotes study streak, the remedy Dulcamara. Why I'm taking the remedies randomly is because they are somewhere related to the remedy that we discussed yesterday or a few days before. And if you are a part of all these sessions that I have been doing, we discussed Baraita Carb a few sessions earlier. I think it was yesterday only or day before yesterday. So the remedy which is related to the Baraita Carb is Dulcamara. So what do we see in Dulcamara? In Ellen's keynotes, the first line, what is written, is that it is adapted to persons of phlegmatic scrofulous constitutions, restless and irritable. So scrofulous means that they have psoric traits. Going further, we have mental confusion, cannot find the right word for anything. So you see this kind of confusion in Medorinum, in Baraita Carb, and many of these psoric remedies. They know the words, they don't find the right words, and it is a sauropsychotic trait. So patients who seem to be adapted to developing psoric conditions, they should be given Dulcamara. Okay. Going further, we have in Ellen's keynotes for Dulcamara, catarrhal rheumatism or skin affections brought on or aggravated by exposure to cold, damp, rainy weather or sudden changes in hot weather. So if the weather is hot and cold or cold and hot or some variation that keeps happening, you should think of Dulcamara. The other remedy you should keep in mind is also bryonia. There is increased secretion of mucous membranes. Perspiration is suppressed from cold. So if you want to just understand the keynote of the remedy Dulcamara, you should just remember that there is increased secretion of mucous membranes in damp weather or aggravation from damp weather or conditions that are more or less cold in nature. Patients living or working in a damp cold basement or a milk dairy, just like the remedies Arania diadema, arsenic and natron sulf. Further down the line, we have in Ellen's keynotes for Dulcamara, anasarca after ague, rheumatism, scarlet fever. So after some acute conditions, if the patients develop swelling in one part or generalized, you should think of Dulcamara. Dropsy after suppressed sweat, suppressed eruptions, exposure to cold. So you see this repetition of the line where there was suppression of some external appearance of discharge which causes problem. If you try to correlate this phase, then you will see that the remedy has a natural tendency to excrete or bring out more discharges. But if those discharges are stopped or prevented from coming out, in some way, then they develop conditions like Dulcamara, especially if it is the weather conditions which are more uh, like the ones indicated. Diarrhea from taking cold in damp places or during damp, foggy weather, change from warm to cold weather. So you see this sudden transition or a gradual transition, whatever be the case, which is happening right now in India in many places and few more places in the North India to come very soon. And it happens in other countries when there are weather changes from warm to cold. In this transition season, you should think of remedy Dulcamara. Interestingly, when you open Boric, you will read the remedy Colocynth. The very first lines also say the same thing, that the sun is powerful enough when the sun is powerful enough to heat the blood. So it is more adapted to conditions which develop after the cold weather when the hot weather sets in. And here it is the opposite. And in fact, the other remedy which is mentioned in the bracket over here is bryonia. So bryonia also has this aggravation from of sudden transition from warm to cold weather, and in those cases we should think of Dulcamara. Going further, we have catarrhal ischia in grown-up children with milky urine from walking with bare feet in cold water. If you have been attending the Elensky Notes study streak from day one, or if you are, really uh, very, strong in memorizing the Elensky Notes, can anyone in the chat box tell me which was the last remedy in the last 12 days that we read which had some complaints from walking in cold water? Okay, so run your, uh, burn your gray cells, go through it, try to find out what remedy can be thought from the last 13 days which had aggravation from walking in cold water or getting feet wet. No one? So you need to memorize Ellen's keynotes very well. It should strike your mind when you have patients telling you that there was a lot of waterlogging in my location and I had to walk in water, and I think since that time I developed complaints. So normally you will go and open the repertory, find out what remedies are indicated for aggravation from walking in cold water. But if you have been a strong memorizer of materia medica, the remedy should, you know, bang your head like that when the symptoms are told. So the remedy which we discussed in the last 12 days, which has this interesting symptom, is Kelkriaka, which has uremic complaints which develop in walking in cold water. So the same thing exists in Dulcamara as well. Going further, we have skin is delicate, sensitive to cold, liable to eruptions, especially urticaria. Every time patient takes cold or is long exposed to the cold involuntarily. So he may not know that he is getting exposed to cold weather, but he gets exposed and he develops skin problems. So those people who have their clothes wet for a long time after getting wet in the rain, and they develop a skin patch in the neck, in the axillae, in the groins, in the legs, in the back. Think of Dulcamara as the very first remedy to give to them rather than trying to get lost in the vast ocean of materia medica and repertory. They have been exposed to cold involuntarily, but they had to do it because there was no other way out. So that is what indicates that they were wet for some time or they were exposed to cold for some time and then they developed the complaints. So skin eruptions from getting exposed to cold or urticaria from getting exposed to cold for a long time. You need to experience this symptom by the version of the patient. Rash before menses is mentioned in Dulcamara. Similar symptom is there in Conaim as well. And during, if it is during profuse menses, it is belladonna and graphitis. Urticaria over whole body, no fever, itching, burns after scratching, aggravated in warmth and better in the cold. Thick brown yellow crusts on scalp, face, forehead, temples, chin with reddish borders, bleeding when scratched. Warts are fleshy, large, smooth on the face or back of the hands and fingers. Okay, so this part of the hands will usually have, this is called as the back of the hand. So if this part has warts or skin eruptions or more predisposition towards skin issues, think of Dulcamara, other remedy being Thuja. Coming to an end, we have modalities where Allen says for Dulcamara that there is aggravation from cold in general, cold air, cold wet weather, suppressed menstruation, eruptions and sweat. So whether there is sweating, whether there is eruptions, this is almost like Merksol that we read yesterday. And amelioration from moving about like ferrum metallicum and rust dogs. Now if you read the relations, you will see that the first remedy that is mentioned in the relations is Baraita cough. So any patient who seem to be Baraita, who are very dull in nature, who are very, you know, inattentive and they do not like to express themselves, they are timid, they are shy, think of Dulcamara as an acute for them. Okay, and the other complementary remedy is mentioned as Kali Sulf, which is not there in Helensky notes. We'll read this in boric when we touch boric again. Dulcamara is incompatible with acetic acid, belladonna, and lachesis, and it should not be used before or after those remedies. It follows well after calcarea carb. Now you see that this symptom evolution of getting feet in wet in water, and if the calcarea carb has not helped much to the patient or calcarea carb is the remedy, think of Dulcamara also. If Paraita carb is the constitutional remedy, think of Dulcamara. If there is no constitutional remedy you have thought of, patient has come to you in acutes, increased secretion of mucous membranes and aggravation from cold damp should be sufficient guide for you to prescribe Dulcamara. Dulcamara also follows well Bryonia, Lyco, Rustox and Sepia. It is similar to Merksol in tylism, which is excess of saliva, glandular swellings, bronchitis and diarrhea, and also to similar susceptibility to Merksol in having susceptibility to weather changes and night pains. And interestingly, Kali sulf is its chemical analog. So there may be traces of sulfurate of Kali, sulfurate of potash in the Dulcamara plant, which is why it is mentioned as its chemical analog. And if there is a patient who has been treated by any skin physician or any other doctor or any other homeopath who has given too much mercury in some form or the other, think of Dulcamara as one of the remedies. So this is what we have today in a very short session, 15 minutes, and we wind up. So this was day 13 of Allen's keynote study streak, and we have around 150 more remedies to go. So stay tuned for interesting learning, and I hope this is going to help you a lot. You are with the Ellen keynote all the time. These lectures are just a guide to motivate you to keep up with the streak and consistency in studying and learning the Materia Medica.